Welcome to the 7th episode of Making Sense. Where today we're gonna talk about hottest issues in Thailand. And today, this is the first time that we're gonna introduce our newest segment called Your Weekly Brief, where we're gonna talk about the most important issues that were happening in Thailand during the last week. So first off, we have
the very important economic news, right? And it's entitled "Reopen Now or Face Collapse." Pailin Chuchotawan, head of a panel steering the economic recovery, on Monday urged the government to reopen the country in order to prevent it from collapsing. He said that despite the lockdown having been gradually eased 6 times, the country's output would not improve unless the country reopens, albeit with precautionary measures. This year's annual GDP is predicted to fall to -8 to 10%, equating to the country's losing 1.5 to 1.7 trillion baht in a single year, Mr. Pailin warned. He said that although the government had spent some time preparing to reopen the country to foreign tourists under the special tourist visa scheme, Thailand is effectively closed. If Thailand could not find a way to reopen its borders for the upcoming high season in the south and final quarter of this year, the STV, the special tourist visa scheme, may have to be scrapped.
Yes. Okay, next up we have the newly appointed army chief, army boss, who in the first ever press conference held at the army, he wants students to change themselves first before trying to change others. Okay, so the new army chief, General Panchit has urged anti-government protesters calling for the reform of the monarchy to reform themselves first before telling other people what to do. He was referring to the anti-government protesters whose demands include calls for changes to the institution. General Pan also warned all parties involved not to create conditions for severe conflict to ensure the chances of another coup are zero. His comments come a week ahead of anti-government demonstrations scheduled for October 14 at Democracy Monument on Ratchathanoon Avenue in Bangkok. So basically, yesterday, the previous chief of the army became a monk, Big Dan. And then this new army chief came out and warned the student. He actually said that he's okay with freedom of expression as long as it aligns with the law. So I think that somehow is a good sign.
Big Dan, the previous army chief, is not the only senior or former senior government retiree to have entered the monkhood, because a few days before he was ordained as monk, the former police chief, right, was also ordained. So
why? What's the trend? Why? What's the trend? So he said
I
that.
honestly don't know, but it could be pure coincidence, or it could be the case of two former shakers and important figures. This ordination might have something to do with their wish to atone for some.
I don't know.
For something they did. I don't know.
The critics on social media they posted this picture of him holding the guns from the Red Shirts protest back in 2010, where it was like post with glasses on, and they were teasing like, if your heart is not pure, your monkhood becomes nothing, something like that. So. That's a good point, to atone for something. But he said that he became a monk to make a merit to the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej and the Queen Mother Sirikit, and also the King and the Queen. So
yes, well,
maybe coincident, but it's a trend.
It could be, but it's just something to note. This is also because these two, especially General Apirat. Right, he is, one of the, biggest figures in in the armed forces,
Yes.
right? Having commanded the army, which is the biggest of all these armed forces.
Maybe he had to step on somebody's toe, something like that.
Well,
Make a man.
of course, it might have happened.
Yeah. So back to General Pan. So the two things that always pop up alongside each other, the the army chief and the coup. Journalists always ask, oh, will there be a coup? Will there be a coup? And General Narongpan said, he gave an ambiguous answer. He said, if there's no condition, there'll be no coup. Is that right? Correct?
Well, this is if there are no grounds.
My timer, I'm sorry.
If there are no grounds for a coup, there won't be one, right? There won't be any kind of power revolt. But you have to take that. You have to take that with a lot of salt, because in the past we heard so very often from the top brass, the big names in the army, in the armed forces, are giving their assurances that there would be no coup, and had that message had been repeated time and again. But then we still had coups, right? Military coups. So you really cannot take their word for it. About
This may be radical,
but
but
not be there'd be no coup about. Zero chance of a coup.
Right. I mean, like, the person who staged a coup should be executed because it's treason. I mean, I think most people agree with this, because if เชือดไก่ให้ลิงดูอะ
Yes.
if they were executed, there will be no coup.
Yes,
But they always pardon themselves.
Works on paper.
Right.
It really works on paper, because when you think about it, whoever emerged from the power revolt emerged with victory.
And then they write the rules to serve themselves.
Of course, you are the law, right? You rewrite the constitution. You practically tear up the constitution.
And a whole episode about the coup and how to prevent it. So
of course,
we need to move on.
It is a power struggle.
Yes.
The process of power struggle, and it works with whoever emerged from this victorious.
And General Pan said that every army chief has been asked this question, and he invariably says the chance is zero on condition that no one causes a conflict that leads to violence and unrest. So I think he perceives that the coup is the answer, in trying to end violence and unrest.
He hasn't really ruled out, has he, the possibility of a POTS, whatever you want to call it, but it is an overthrow of a democratically
government.
But in this particular, it's a good point, an interesting point to make here, because when he mentions that, it means that he also has, not anticipate, he might have, his fear or concern in the back hanging over him about the possibility of, really immense social unrest or, political, commotion in the future. And if there's no other means of suppressing it, the tanks might roll into the streets. Right. I don't know, right? This might be, what goes on in his mind. Yes. So this is a way of justifying or trying to find out what a solution or options there might be in diffusing the country's critical problems.
Yeah, she said he's okay. He has no problem with freedom of speech, but it has to be in line with the law, and that his main objective is to protect the nation, religion, the king, and the people, and he would do whatever it takes to protect, to ensure the security of these institutions. So let's move to the hottest issue this week.
Right.
The appointment of the new finance minister after the previous one resigned in less than a month?
Because I have heard, I mean, and this is an issue that has been brought up within, in the finance circles in this country. And I've been talking to some friends and, people in the inner circles.
Inside source.
Yes, and what they said was, what's the fuss about the appointment of a finance minister? I mean, particularly this one, because Mr. Akom Termpitaya Paisit, right? He is no stranger to the cabinet because he has previously served as transport minister when under General Cha administration.
The post-coup administration.
Yes, the post-coup. So he came in, right, and he took over the role as the transport minister.
And also he was serving as a member of the National Legislation Assembly.
And nobody knew who he was. I mean, people in outside the finance sphere knew who he was when he was appointed transport minister. Well, and when he actually took over that role and worked as a minister. Because all eyes were on him because the expectation was that he would have to prove his worth naturally over quite a short period of time because the country had been at the time suffering a setback because of the aftermath of the coup, right? When the country was being shunted by many countries.
So basically, at that time, people, not so many people known him.
No.
Because he came from a civil servant sector.
Yes.
He graduated from Thammasat University in economics and then moved on and then went on to study in the U.S. at William College, and then came back to work with the office of the National Economic and Social Development for over 20 years.
Yes. I mean, you've got to understand that to be able to work in this council, the National Economic and Social Development Council. Well, to be able to work here in this particular council, which is the body set up to plan the economic policies and chart the economic directions of this country, to be able to work there, you've got to be. You've got to have, you've got to have, a lot of knowledge about the country naturally, and he went on to become that council's Secretary General, which is the top person, to manage the work there. And so basically, he is quite, a person with a proven track record and caliber, right? So he's not a nobody.
Yeah, because in order to work on the top, the biggest position, the top position as a Secretary General, you ought to be able to overcome this skepticism and ego of your colleagues and peers. So in Thailand, civil servant sector, let's be honest, in top ministries, there always be ego.
I don't know about ego, but there's certainly a lot. It could be a natural trait, or for some people. But when you're skilled at doing something and you put that to good use, and there are a lot of people like that in a particular organization, right? So it is quite an agency or a body there that where it can work. For the good of the country, and a lot of people would be expecting, to approach it for advice, for suggestion, for consultation on things in economics. It is an important, organization, and Mr. Akom was taking the helm of this council, and when he was. Given that transport portfolio under the previous government, he was he did his quite a good job because you know, after he left the transport ministry, a lot of things had happened since then, right? We've got the country's railway infrastructure in place. So we've got the high-speed train projects rolling right now, and a whole comprehensive network of the country's rail system has been installed, and the projects, a lot of the projects under this network are proceeding, right? So he has achieved what he had set out to do as a transport minister during that time, and so we're talking about Mr. Akom having been out of the political limelight for a bit of time, for a few years, and there was rumor that he was coming back to the cabinet, but that rumor didn't mention, what capacity, ministerial capacity he would assume if he were to come back. But a lot of speculation had been made that he might, become, the Prime Minister's office minister when the Mr. Somkit left the cabinet, along with his, close aides who were, assuming important cabinet seats at the time, like, the industry minister, right? Not the industry, the energy minister. And so when, these important economic ministerial posts have been left vacant, a lot of people, were, as I said, speculation was very, was going out saying, this Mr. Akom is going to be coming back, assuming one of those vacant seats. But we didn't see that happen. We didn't see that happen. And so his name just faded into the background with Mr. Preedy's name, emerging as the, a very likely replacement for Uttama, Mr. Uttama, who was the former finance minister. So Mr. Preedy actually was the person the Prime Minister picked to succeed Mr. Uttama, right, as finance minister. And things were going well. A lot of people thought that things were going well because Mr. Preedy, is also one of the biggest names in the private sector, right? And he has assumed, the biggest seat in the PTT public company, right? So his background is, from the private sector, very strong. And he was, a lot of people trusted that he would do, a very good job.
But then he resigned.
The economy. But then, barely 3 weeks after he was appointed and started work as finance minister, he threw in the towel. He bowed out.
His white flag. Maybe. So people have speculated it's all about the pressure from the inside.
Well, not the pressure on the job, itself.
Politique.
I mean, I have no doubt that he had that, ability to deliver the job as finance minister. I mean, there's no doubt that he could do it, but there's more
Political struggle
to being a minister in this day and age, because you have to be also dealing with politicians, the other politicians around you. Right? Remember, this is no longer the era under the regime of the National Council for Peace and Order, the coup maker.
They're roaming freely, pursuing their own interests.
Yes. I mean, the cabinet is now made up of, politicians from the coalition parties, right? The biggest party being the Palang Pracharat party, right? That could cause a lot of trouble for people, who cannot manage the inner power of of politics.
So in a way, do you think that Mr. Akon will be able to bypass all this, political struggle, since he had been working with the Office of the National?
Well, when he was Secretary General of the Council, the National Economic and Social Development Council, that was, he proved that he was, very skilled at running, an agency, a bureaucratic agency. But when he crossed over and he worked as transport minister, there were doubts whether he could also deal with, political,
Dynamics.
maneuvering, right? But there was not that much political maneuvering under the regime of the NCPO, right? But still, he would have to, because he was totally out of his comfort zone, and he would have to manage the country's, overall policy on transport. So it was a bigger, work. He had the work cut out for him, and he did quite a good job. So it went into his resume, right, to say that he was a transport minister, and he had actually, achieved. He's delivered on the policy.
What does your inside source say about him?
Well, my inside sources have said. My inside sources have said that he was quite, well, when he was approached to do the job, to return to the cabinet, but this time as finance minister. As you know, being a finance minister during this critical time of the COVID pandemic, it's really not a job that can give you the kind of honeymoon period. There is no honeymoon period because you have to get right down to the job. Jump into the job and start working right away. And now, a lot of the problems are lying there on the table for you to sort out, right? So now we've got the GDP shrinking to a record low, right? 8 to 9, minus 8 to 10% this year. That's how bad the economy is going to be for the rest of the year. And so he has to come in, and when the government has spent so much money, on the one hand, trying to sustain the economy. On the other hand, to make sure that the industries that are now affected by the COVID-19 pandemic are not going to be destroyed by the lack of funding, by the lack of of revenue or income, or that's going to be there when the country recovers from this crisis. So this is really a huge challenge lying ahead, and Mr. Akon has to, pull out all the stop and to get to it, to get to work, and make it succeed. Right? So the success of it is going to be quite important. It's going to be really what decides how long he can keep on the job of finance minister.
So let's count. How many days has it been?
Well, he hasn't really, officially started
yet.
work yet, because he has to, for this ministerial capacity to be, fulfilled, to be, to be completed. He has to be sworn in first, and that happens on October.
Even though the appointment has been promulgated in the Royal Gazette.
Yes. Well, it has been published in the Royal Gazette. And now it's still the next process. The next the final process is for him to swear in, to attend a sworn-in ceremony.
According to your inside sources, what would be his main projects, main objectives in his first, say, 100 days in the office?
We haven't really discussed in details what the priorities will be, but he is going to be certainly be facing, the the immediate policies like, pumping cash into the economy. Because all the main engines of the economy, like tourism, have been all but shut down. Yes. Right? So, but we're starting to get people to come back. We're discussing the welcoming back some of the Chinese tourists, right? But that has not been decided. And right now, at this point in time, we're seeing a really critical contraction of the tourism sector in key destinations like Phuket. So that is going to be a priority, one of the priorities. You can't leave that only to the tourism ministry, because the finance minister is going to be the one deciding where to put the rehabilitation, where the financial, the means of resuscitating this sector.
Because the government is trying every way to pump money into the system. And the 30,000 baht tax break just got knocked from the cabinet, right? Yes. The Center for Economic Situation Administration, or CESA, on Wednesday approved a proposal to offer taxpayers income tax deductions of up to 30,000 baht for purchasing products and services with 7% value-added tax in another bid to boost domestic consumption. So the picture is very grim for me because it's about...
Of course, this is not really a happy time, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, anywhere you look.
I'm getting depressed.
I mean, in this country or outside this country, everybody is trying to sort out the mess, within their own territories, within their own countries are now kind of becoming fragmented because they've closed the borders. So they're concentrating on what they can do to beat this, pandemic that is still raging, in large economies like the United States, in Europe. I mean, the virus hasn't been combated, and we're still not getting the kind of vaccine that we are hoping to get. It's going to be...
the politics of vaccines.
Yes. And it's not going to be easy, according to the, International Air Transport Association, or IATA. I attended the online conference with IATA the other day, and, the association has painted quite a grim picture, right, of the travel sector as well as the tourism sector, because these two sectors, they depend on each other, right? And so when people stop flying, when people are not traveling, the tourism takes a direct battering. And the global, and we're not talking about 2 or 3 countries being affected by this. We're talking about the global scale of damage the virus is causing. So now, in Thailand, Mr. Akom is going to be taking all of this in. It's going to be factored in to the way that he formulates his policy to get the economy back on track.
With all the schemes that have been put in place already, like ไปเที่ยวด้วยกัน, go travel together, and tax break, and various moves to try to pump the economy, and also the travel industry.
I know that the sentiment you're feeling, quite a pessimistic outlook, and everybody has the right to feel that way. But I think what we should expect from the new finance minister is that he has to be positive.
Yes. And we have to be positive.
You need to be positive and be realistic at the same time, because all the numbers are coming out, right? And as finance minister, he knows that how deep in the crisis we are at this particular point in time, right? And what kind of remedies are we going to be offering the country and all the sectors now being affected by the pandemic. right? And all these scenarios will have to be made regarding, the economic outlook associated with the recovery that is being made, right? So it's not going to be easy.
Yes.
But at least Mr. Akom is well received. He's been welcomed.
At least we can be optimistic.
Yes, he's been welcomed by the big names in the private sector, in companies and associations, finance circles, and so we've got here. Mr. Jongrak Ratanapian, who is Senior Executive Vice President of Kasikorn Bank. Now, he said the official appointment of Mr. Akom as Finance Minister would complete the country's economic team and help continue to drive economic policies. And we've got the Thai National Shippers Council saying that, Mr. Akom is knowledgeable and competent person, right? And the chairman of the Federation of Thai Capital Market Organizations, Patpon Sabpaitoon, right? He said that, Mr. Akom, right, understands the inner workings of the public sector, and which is, a necessary quality for the job at hand. And lastly, now we've got Somchai Phakapatiwat, the independent academic, saying that he is the appropriate choice.
So he got the blessing from these people in the public sector.
But then, how is he going to be managing? That's another story.
You have to go to him and ask. Maybe we can bring him here. We can bring him here.
We will try our very best to have him on the show.
But first you go to your inside source and ask him or her what will be the priorities, and then we can share with the audiences.
Yes. Well, I think as the time as we carry on, I think it's going to become, quite clear what he intends to do with regards to, how he's going to run the economic policies.
So you are optimistic about?
I have to be. There's no other choice, I think. I mean, you can't just be pessimistic all the time. You've got to, look up.
Yeah. At least we got someone from who has experience in his pocket, 20 years in the office of the National Economic and Social Development. And so yes, I'm optimistic. I have to be, of course. Otherwise, I will plunge into deep depression. And that pretty much sums up this 7th episode of our show, Making Sense.
Making Sense.
And
so,
leave the comment.
Please, next week, we're going to be coming back with...
after the protest?
Yes, the protest.
Well, I'm going to be tired, exhausted, because I'm going to be covering the event on this 14th. But we'll come back from the protest.
You're going to have a lot to share with us.
Sure.
Okay.
I hope no violence occur.
Right. So let's...
Not likely, though.
Fingers crossed.
Not likely. Oh, but on the 14th, they're going to merge the two groups. The Free People and Free Youth Movement and United Front for Thammasat Demonstration, such a long name. But they're going to merge this time, not like the last time where the Free Youth and Free People stood in the ringside and just observed.
Okay.
So,
right.
Yes. So
that's
next week, let's come back and talk about the protest.
So don't forget, if you like us, if you want to subscribe to us and
criticize,
and share your comments. Right. Thank you very much.
Don't be so mean, please. I'm just kidding. See you.
See you later.
Until next episode. Bye-bye.